Good morning, everyone. We'll get started in just a few minutes. Thank you for joining us today. Hi, everyone. We'll get started in just 2 minutes. Thank you for joining. Good morning, and thank you for being here for the final conversation in our four-part series, The Future of Economic Support, Cash Credits, and Family Prosperity. My name is Lelaine Bigelow, and I'm the Executive Director of the Georgetown Center on Poverty and Inequality. Over the past few months, we've been building a conversation step by step. First, with Aisha Niandoro of Magnolia Mothers Trust, we talked about what it means for families to simply have cash to meet their basic needs. Then, with Margot Crandall Hollick of the Urban Institute, we looked at how policy design, especially refundable tax credits, shapes who actually benefits from those supports. In our third webinar last month, with Bradley Hardy, Distinguished Professor of the McCourt School of Public Policy here at Georgetown, he helped us step back and ask what the long-term benefits are of providing families with more financial stability. Today, we get to bring these ideas together. At the Georgetown Center on Poverty and Inequality, we think a lot about how economic policy shapes people's lives and how the stories we tell about poverty shape what solutions feel possible. Too often, poverty is framed as a matter of individual choices rather than the policy decisions and systems that shape people's opportunities in the first place. This series has been about widening that view. We are really honored to close the series with Congresswoman Bonnie Watson Coleman, whose work has consistently pushed Congress to see poverty as a structural issue and to think seriously about the role government plays in either reinforcing or reducing economic security. Congresswoman, thank you for being with us today. We're grateful for your leadership and excited to learn more.
I am so delighted to have this conversation with you today. This work is just so important. And to me, the elimination of poverty isn't that difficult to figure out. It has something to do with dependability of resources that meet your needs. So here we are. Thank you for all the work that you all are doing in this space and the conversations that you've had.
Thank you. So let's dig in. You spent decades working at the intersection of policy, power, and people's lived experience. Through your leadership on the House Democratic Caucus Task Force on Poverty, you helped elevate poverty as a structural issue. And I just want to say that is so incredibly meaningful and important. Maybe if you're just into this issue, you might not know that when I was working on the House Task Force on Poverty 10-ish years ago, that wasn't the kind of conversation we were having. So I just wanted to name that and just thank you for elevating poverty as a structural issue. But not only that, but you were demanding that that policy be coordinated on the federal level. So, if you could tell me, what do you think policymakers most often misunderstand about poverty and what actually helps families build stability?
Well, one thing I think that policymakers and lawmakers misunderstand is that poverty is not the choice of the folks who are living in it.
Yes.
And that these are hardworking people, hardworking families that just can't make ends meet because they don't have the kind of income, or they don't have the kind of benefits, and they don't have the kind of resources. And so for me, the issue is to look at those things that make you holistically healthy. And that is your access to healthcare, your access to a decent income, your access to the amount of money you need to shelter, to feed, and to meet all of your other needs. And to me, that's when you look at the richness, the wealth of this country, that isn't asking very much
Right.
on behalf of those who really need government to work for them. So for me, it's about money, reliability, and stability, all of which create healthier families, healthier mothers, healthier fathers, and more stable family environments. It's not that simple, and it's a benefit to the larger community and our economy.
So you touched a little bit about this, but you pushed on everything from cash supports to wages to health and reentry. Looking across all of that, what have you come to believe really makes the biggest difference in helping families getting breathing room and real economic security?
Stability, reliability on all those
Yes.
issues. You know, in addition to the points that you just raised that we tried to elevate in terms of legislation and in policy, we also have a profit sharing bill where if you're a mega corporation, that you are to make available to the folks that made you such a mega a corporation a piece of the action, so to speak, you know? So it is looking at the broad spectrum of need and the broad spectrum of resources and opportunities that exist.
So I think you're talking a lot about making sure workers have the same types of access to the supports that corporate companies do. So tell me, you've spent time um, a lot with your constituents. You spent your career fighting for people who are too often who feel unseen by these systems. Can you tell me what you think? Tell me what they've taught you about economic insecurity and how that feels like in people's day-to-day lives.
It's depressing.
Hmm.
And, you know, it's you're always experiencing a sense of anxiety. Am I going to be able to meet, you know, fundamental needs like a decent house, or apartment, food on the table, clothing on the children, health care, and child care. All of those things that make sense. And in addition to that, just opportunities to advance. Um,
Right.
decent wages and benefits like maternity leave, family leave, and things of that nature, but even opportunities to learn, work, get into a training program that helps to elevate your skills. And that's particularly challenging right now with AI moving into so many spaces that we relied upon people to fill. And so to me, people are not, they're not comfortable with what their future is
Right.
going to be. And you know, that impacts the well-being of their children, just the well-being of the whole unit. If you go to bed every night wondering whether or not you're going to be able to meet your needs the next day, that has a long-term depressing impact on you. and it's unnecessary in this country.
Yes. I mean, I think you touched on something that I know both of us really care about, which is that we should have a poverty policy that focuses on people's well-being and allow people to thrive, right? This bootstraps mentality is not what we need to make a difference to end generational poverty. We actually need to focus on how we can get people to feel like they can succeed and thrive and not be stressed and take the time they can with their families. So I think
Yeah.
that's absolutely right.
And I think we got to look at the way we've been delivering resources to people who are in need.
Hmm.
We've got this sort of welfare mentality that if I give you like the minimum, if I give you something and then I hold these strings over your head, or I create this system that is so convoluted for you to access, that I'm doing my job.
Right,
But we perpetuated poverty and impoverishment for decades because we piecemeal resources out to families. We even had systems in place where men and women who were the mother and father of the child couldn't live in the same house.
right,
If for you, the mother, to be qualified for the resources, how absurd is that? That
right,
we actually intentionally uh, broke the family bond so that we could give the mother of the children or child what amounted to inadequate resources in the first place. And so we really needed to rethink our role, our responsibility, the space the government should work in. And we should recognize that at the end of the day, it's not that difficult to recognize that what you need are enough resources and services to be able to get through your family's needs, but to be able to rely on them.
right. And I mean, I just have to put a little plug in that in the fall, we are actually coming out with a new product that I think will actually have us start this conversation in a better place. So stay tuned. I can't share too much now, but I'm excited to share that with you in the fall. But I think this is a great transition to think about. You mentioned reliable, and support in a reliable way. So I'd love to talk about the Guaranteed Income Pilot Program Act that you introduced, because I think that really gets to what, we have been talking about. We've seen over the past several years that there's been a growing interest in direct cash policies from guaranteed income pilots to refundable tax credits that help families make ends meet. So you helped shape that conversation through your leadership and your proposals like the Guaranteed Income Pilot Program Act. Something that you said when you announced the reintroduction of the bill was so powerful. You said, what we learned when Congress made the decision to send economic impact payments through the CARES Act and American Rescue Plan was that our government can prevent people from falling into poverty. It can build a floor beneath which we say no one in this country should fall. This bill is all about looking at ways to make the floor permanent, giving more families the sense of economic security they deserve. So I'd love to hear you talk more about what would a floor look like in practice and what would it take to make it permanent?
So, included in that is the whole child tax credit
Hmm.
that really lifted the majority of children out of poverty. Um, for me, a floor is the ability to meet your needs, your foundational needs of shelter, healthcare, food, protection, decent decent wages, whatever your family needs in order to not just survive, but to be able to enjoy a level of life that gives you comfort,
Hmm.
to become part of a community that you help to embrace and further, to contribute to the economy because you have the resources to purchase the things that not only that you need, but some of the things that you want. To me, it is a sense of safety and security and reliability. That's and wherever you live. And
Hmm.
that's different on the West Coast and the East Coast. Is different in the South and in the North. Um, but we ought to be looking at what is a livable wage and battery of services or programs that are needed in wherever region you live. You know, and those wraparound services include making sure that there's childcare, making sure that there is healthcare availability, that Medicaid is extended to wherever and to whomever it is needed, things of that nature, that there are not food deserts where people have to pay exorbitant money for the food that they're trying to get for their families and have to travel
Right,
so far to get it, making sure that even transportation is available. All of those things go into um, a healthier lifestyle.
right,
And that's what we should be looking at. What makes me happy? Well, what makes me happy is the same thing that makes that family at the lower end of the income spectrum happy. So, why isn't that family entitled to the kind of stability and reliability and decency of your living environment, your work environment, and being able to share with your family hope for tomorrow, and at the
right.
same time um, be able to think about your child's future, your children's future.
Right. And there's a notion there that we talked about this at the last webinar, is that we have a lot of people, and this gets to your other bill on business. We have a lot of people in Congress fighting for stability for business, but not that many people who are fighting for family stability. And what you were talking about to me also is really important when we're talking about the multidimensional facets of poverty, right? So yes, guaranteed income is great. It's wonderful. It helps, create that stable floor, but like the wraparound services, like having access to childcare, great transportation, that makes like the rest of your life become easier and create that space. So I think that's incredible. And so I think that is an important part of the conversation that, again, we don't always see when people are talking about solutions.
I think you're absolutely right. I think the issue is that we look for the lowest, and
Right.
as opposed to looking to the holistic needs of a family to be able to live without worrying every single solitary day about whether or not they're going to be able to meet the needs of their family the next day. It's exhausting. It
Hmm.
is mentally draining. It is physically draining. It has an impact on family dynamics. It has an income. It has an impact on the mother going to work, the father going to work. You know, and we need to look at the work environment as well. You just can't give people slave wages,
Right.
which are insufficient to meet their very fundamental needs, and think that that's okay. It
Right.
isn't okay in a country that has found the way to make somebody a trillionaire,
Hmm.
many billionaires and super millionaires, and do all the kinds of loopholes and tax plans to make those people richer. At the same time, you've got people at the working class and even lower income class people just kind of trying to claw their way out of the insecurity that they're experiencing, not knowing whether or not Medicaid is going to be eliminated or changed in such a way that you're not going to be eligible, your child's not going to be eligible, not having access to health care that's good health care and not assumptions that are made because you're poor, you're minority, you're woman, whatever. You know, there's just so much to consider. But what it takes for me is to understand the dignity that the family should have, the dignity that every human being in this country should expect and be treated.
Yes. And I think that actually goes well with the next part that I would really love to talk to you about, which is about trust and policy design and delivery. Because we're in a moment right now where conversations about economic support are often shaped by questions about trust, whether or not families can be trusted to make the decisions that are best for their families, and whether government can deliver the support in ways that actually work for people. Uh, I think about this question all the time, actually, since I've left government. So for those of us who are working in research, advocacy, and policy, what do we need to do differently to help policymakers better understand what families are navigating and move good ideas forward? Because I think what we've been talking about here implicitly is like this scarcity mindset that's so prevalent.
So your research is important if it is acknowledging the lived experiences of those whom you're trying to address. And so it's not necessarily a whole bunch of esoteric theoretical models. It is actually about what does it take to make a family whole. And for me, we've already seen that with the guaranteed income programs that have been piloted around the country, that people who have the resources use those resources to do things like pay the rent, buy food, get to
Yeah.
work, take your child to child care, things of that nature. So we need to trust these families
Hmm.
who are, you know, income insufficient. We need to understand that that is not their choice. That is
Yes.
not a result of being lazy. That is a result, in many instances, of systems that haven't worked and government systems that haven't worked. Government has got to stop being so bureaucratic, having such complicated regulations and complicated application processes to just to help people. Because by the time they get through the whole process, their situation has worsened.
Right.
So we need to understand that it researchers need to help government understand that here's the lived experience.
Hmm.
This is what we see the families and the individuals that we've been targeting for our research. These are the things that they need. These are the programs that we've seen tested, piloted across the country that work. And here are the gaps
Right.
that exist and with the best efforts because
Right.
nothing is perfect and we're learning as we're going and we're expanding our appreciation of the humanness of these individuals and families that need real assistance, that are entitled to it. In the richest country in the doggone world, we ought not have to worry about children being shelterless, families being separated, families not being able to access health care or food or anything else that they need in order to live a healthy life. And I think that that's what we got to focus on. What is a healthy life? Well,
What is a healthy life?
yeah, it sure is not one where you go to bed every night worrying whether or not you're going to have that shelter over your head the next day or the next month. It's
Right.
certainly not having inadequate food to put on the table, not having nutritious food. It certainly isn't questioning whether or not my child who is sick in the other room I can take to uh, a doctor, urgent care, and have his or her needs met. It's not those kinds of um, uh, insecurities. And
Right.
so for me, security is a very key component. Security and decency and dignity kind of flow together.
Right. And I think in that dignity that you talk about, um, what we have seen, actually just come out 2 weeks ago from the administration is that families have to be this master of paperwork, in order, even if you are, very, very sick. If you have a cancer diagnosis, you are having to prove, yourself every several months. And I think that is the wrong direction of where we are, what we are talking about here, particularly around trust and what we think families need to just, have general well-being, like not
Yeah.
even yet thriving, right? So just like, but what we are putting people through in this sort of policy design conversation here with paperwork is seems to be in the wrong direction.
Yeah, regulations on top of regulations.
Hmm.
They're intentional to dissuade someone from even pursuing the programs and the resources that are available. We're in I think, very unique period right now. Um, and I pray to God that it ends soon
Yes.
because this is a period where every loophole and every excuse and every waiver and every opportunity is accorded to the very, very, very wealthy.
Hmm.
And every stumbling block, every sort of massive requirement, every redundancy in regulations and requirement are what we experience at working class families and even families who are even lower income. And so right now there's very little trust between government and people in the respective states and communities and counties that rely upon government to work appropriately in the space that is needed, and it is exaggerated,
Right.
the intentionality of the evil withholding
Right.
of resources and support is staggeringly exaggerated and intentional. And so, I say that we're dealing with a very evil time. It's
Hmm.
evil, greedy, and corrupt.
Right.
But, that's why I try to encourage people get involved any way you can, but minimally. I don't care if it's the school board or the fire department's election. Vote, 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 because we have to be more circumspect about who we put into elective office. We have to really know what they say they stand for. We got to look to see what they have stood for. And because we are putting people in positions now that really, when given an opportunity, don't give a damn
Right. Right.
and don't want to understand and want to make all kinds of excuses. And so it is vitally important right now that we as advocates, we as legislators, we as researchers, we all make sure that we're talking to our audiences.
Right. And I think your point is well taken because this is purposeful right now, what is happening so that these programs are not working for people. And so there continues to erode that trust in government. And, certainly from where we are at GCPI, we believe there is a strong role for government, particularly in ending poverty.
Of course,
Yeah.
I'm on appropriations and budget committee.
Hmm.
And so I find myself by the end of the night in the appropriations
Yeah.
meetings that sometimes last till 1 o'clock in the morning. I am almost in tears because
Yeah.
of the things that have been taken out of the appropriations bill, the things that have been put in to make things even harder for people to access, the the failure to recognize that we're talking about humanity. We're talking
Yes.
about human beings. And I don't understand how my colleagues on the other side, the Republican majority, can just be so caught up in the evilness and greed and corruption of the president of the United States and be so scared
Right.
that they don't stand up for just in your face options, just not even esoteric options, not even like 17 platforms of information, just fundamental enough food to eat, SNAP benefits, WIC benefits, food deserts, Medicaid, all those things that, my 14-year-old granddaughter would understand, 13-year-old granddaughter, she wishes she's 14. 13-year-old granddaughter would understand if I sat down and talked to her about them. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
it ain't that hard.
Yeah. Thank you for all of your work in those committee rooms and for those late nights. And I want us to at least end this part with before we get to audience questions on a good note. And I'm excited to say I had the opportunity to visit the Obama Presidential Center. So I had a recent opportunity to sort of be refilled with hope. And so I share that with you. I share that with people here in the audience. So when you think about the future of economic support in this country, what gives you hope?
The younger generation that's running for office on the federal level, for one
Hmm.
thing. I believe that there is, I don't care what they say, I think that there is this quote unquote progressive movement
Right.
as it relates to seeking office. I don't think progressive is the appropriate word.
Yeah.
Because when you talk about healthcare for all and housing, decent housing and food and public education and childcare and things of that nature for anybody who needs it, that's not progressive. That's just acknowledging our responsibility that to whom much is given, much is required. That's just
Yeah.
acknowledging the responsibility that we take taxpayers' dollars and we need to apply them appropriately and create systems that not just piecemeal
Hmm.
individuals some resources here, some resources there, but looks at the modeling what it takes to make a family whole, what it takes to make an individual safe and secure in his or her future. So for me, the hope is that we know how awful it is right now, that people are becoming more and more aware. Even folks who voted the wrong way, from my perspective, are now recognizing that their fundamental needs are changing, that their cost of living has become almost unaffordable, that they can't put the gas in their cars because gas is so unaffordable, that they don't have the kind of access to health care that they really need because as an aging population and as a population that's exposed to all kinds of germs and illness. So
Yeah.
I think people are becoming more aware. I think that their bottom line is changing about what they expect from the people that they elect to office. So my hope is that what we're all experiencing right now is very temporary and changes rather soon, at least with the elections in the legislative branch of federal government. And I see states taking on
Yes.
some of these challenges and knowing that the federal government wants to push more on the states without leaving more money in the states.
Right.
So,
Right.
so our governors are fighting back, our attorneys general are fighting back, and people are showing up. We
Yeah.
know King's rallies, all kinds of other rallies show up.
Show up. Thank you. Thank you. Well, before we get to questions, I just want to say we should acknowledge the fact that you are retiring this year, and I think a lot of us who are on this webinar are very sad. And when I first started in this role 2 years ago, you asked to meet with me, and I thought that was just the most amazing thing ever. And it showed your commitment to the work on poverty, meeting with all groups, large and small. And so I just want to thank you for your commitment and all the work that you are doing. And I I hope that you are on a beach somewhere, next year, but I know that you won't be far, and I know you will still be fighting the good fight.
Thank you. I appreciated your meeting with me. I needed to meet with people who were scholarly in the field that I was so very much legislatively interested in, and what you all learned and what you had to share. Um, I believe that at the end of the day, poverty is really a choice that
Hmm.
we've made and that we need to unmake, and that is all about having sufficient resources to meet your needs. Government has it.
Yes.
How it spends its money is the defining issue here, and that's why everybody has to be so involved in letting government know what it will and will not tolerate. And so thank you for having shared with me the wisdom of your work. It is so important that all of you who work in this space and maybe come from different, angles, but
Right.
recognize the interconnectedness of
Yes.
the work and
Right.
and and the challenges and the populations run from folks who are reentering after being incarcerated to folks
Hmm.
who are working every day but just can't make ends meet because their jobs aren't paying them the value of the work that they do. And when I
Right.
think of people that go into homes and take care of sick people and older people and get paid pennies and very
Yeah.
little benefits, it concerns me because I think we can and should do much better.
Right. Right. Well, we still have some time for a few questions. Our team, we have so many in the queue. So I will start with the first one. As a policymaker, how do you communicate the need to fight poverty in several ways simultaneously to a public that is increasingly responsive only to single silver bullet solutions, right?
Wow.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that's a good one. First of all, I try to communicate. I try to use every platform I have to
Hmm.
communicate either, long stuff or short stuff. I try to make sure that I am communicating with my colleagues about where I stand on issues where I think is very important. I try to have town halls.
Yeah.
Yeah, I use, you know, every platform I can to talk to people and to kind of let them know that we're all in this together and that together we can resolve some of these issues, some of these barriers, and I think that that's and then we offer legislation, and we do it through
Right.
our respective caucuses. It could be the Progressive Caucus, the Black Caucus, the Hispanic Caucus. It can be any caucus. It can be just the Democratic Caucus. Sometimes we don't get our pieces of legislation through, but we see pieces of it in other legislation. So we
Yes.
go, okay, that's moving in the right direction. But mostly, I think we just can't give up.
Right.
We can't give up on how we define living outside of poverty. And
Hmm.
that's a lot of that has to do with the work that you all do. And you help us to formulate our arguments inside the Beltway.
Hmm. Thank you. Okay, so our next question is, when you've made the case to your colleagues for modernizing the EITC to recognize caregiving, what's the pushback you hear most and how do you respond to it?
Mostly I hear crickets, because it's not something that they necessarily want to deal with. The Democratic caucus recognizes the value of the EITC and it recognizes the child tax credit and things of that nature and how they impact underserved communities and people. Um, so we talk about it from the perspective that we're all aging. This We live longer. From baby boomers on, we're living long lives. We need to have health care in our homes. We need to have access to people coming in and helping us. I try to get people to, wrap your brain around your future and your needs, your mother's needs, your loved one's needs. People need to understand that, but for the grace of God, they could need every one of the services that you and I have been talking about.
Right. And
And I try to appeal to that. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
right. If I may, I will add that the New York Times had a great piece a couple of weeks ago about caregiving. I believe it was in their magazine. Um, and I was very deep in the care movement during the pandemic, and I think I still feel like there is so much that we can utilize from the fact that like caregiving was exposed during that time in a way that it was very much unseen. Like I remember even working on products before that talked about how I was unseen, but the pandemic really again made it seen. And I think Senator Andy Kim, New Jersey again. Um, has a great story around his caregiving. And I think that's so important as well to have, men talking about caregiving in a way that hasn't been done before. And we've seen so much more progress over the years. So I'm just hopeful in that. regard that like we will like you said, continue to see progress and continue to move that ball forward.
So my aunt and my father both lived with me at the end stages of their lives. My aunt lived with us for like 2.5 years. My dad was with us at least the last 6, 8 months of his life. And I had the flexibility of
Hmm.
being here for them. I have a I have brothers and my sisters-in-law and a husband who kicked in also in terms of taking care of them. But in addition, we had to have some home health care aides
Right.
come in and help. And so unless you walked in those shoes, you don't have any idea, but you should take it from someone like me. I'd go to bed at night and I'd hear my daddy holler out,
Hmm.
Bonnie, Bonnie, come. And I'd run down the steps to see what had happened. He may have fallen, he may have had some kind of an episode or whatever. Um, but I was blessed to be there.
Hmm.
Everybody doesn't have that situation, but everybody is going to need care at some point. And
Right.
we would choose to have care in our home environments. So we need to pay attention to who we'd like to come in and provide that service. And we'd like for them to feel comfortable in their role, in the value of their work, and the pay and the benefits that they receive. Because we want professional people to come in.
Right. Absolutely. And I can empathize with that with my mom. I was with her too, and it was scary when it first started that I was the only one who was going to take care of her. And I was glad to have the help when we were finally able to get it. So, yes. Okay, I think we have time for maybe one more, and then we can wrap up. So thank you. How do we talk about policies that support families living in poverty with people who, like many in the current administration, have misconceptions, like the role of work requirements or prevalence of fraud and waste?
First of all, we need to warn them that we're not only going to talk to them about how ridiculous and unfair these redundant requirements and these unnecessary requirements are, but we're also going to take that conversation out to their constituents who are or are not getting the benefit of the services that they need. This is a time when we, the people, need to be front and center and communicating and standing up and speaking up and letting our elected officials know where we stand and what we demand. And I believe at the end of the day, the majority of people are decent and want our loved ones to be taken care of, want people to live healthy lives, want children to have healthy futures, and recognize that we're all in this together. And I
Yeah.
said it before, and honest to God, I mean it. But for the grace of God, I could be on the other end of this conversation, as could any one of them.
Hmm. Well, that is very powerful. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. We hope this series has helped everyone connect the dots and open new ways of thinking about what economic support can look like. This is the last webinar in this series, but it's not the end of the conversation. We'll share a recording of this conversation on our website, so please keep an eye out and share it with your colleagues who couldn't join. You can also continue to follow our work at georgetownpoverty.org, and we'll also drop into the chat how you can stay connected with the center and myself on LinkedIn. And thank you again for joining us. Thank you, Congresswoman. I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you. I really appreciated this conversation with you. God bless you and your work.